Hi, this is Ryan Smith. Welcome to MODEX Network Voices, where we feature people in the offsite construction industry. And I'm joined by my partner at MODEX, Ivan Rupnik. Ivan, please go ahead, say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Ivan and I have been doing this for a while, and but prior to even starting MODEX, years ago, I had the opportunity to do an academic sabbatical, a secondment, as they say in the UK, in Edinburgh. And during that time, got to know David Crawford. And David Crawford has moved on to greener pastures beyond academia and to his company of CCG, Campbell Construction Group, which he'll talk about. And they do offsite manufacturing, offsite construction as a general contractor. So he'll talk and introduce himself. He's general manager there at CCG. And David, please introduce yourself and share a little bit about your company, and then we'll have some discussion.
Hi, good afternoon for people. Hello, David Crawford, as Ryan said there, General Manager from CCG OSM. So OSM, as I'll talk to just briefly, is a part of the wider CCG corporate business, the CCG Group business. So thank you, Ryan and Ivan, for inviting me along to take part in the MODEX series. Big fan of what you guys are doing to share the wider front on industrialized construction, and hopefully I can play a small part in that. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Absolutely, yes. We feel fortunate to be able to look at CCG, which has been quite an international player, not only in Scotland and the UK. So thank you again, David. I don't know if you want to try and share your screen here, and we'll go through your presentation.
Sure. Hopefully this will work. How's that coming through? All good? Excellent. Okay, so CCG, as I mentioned, we're OSM as part of a wider CCG group. It's a privately owned business, which was established in 1974. So it's been in standings for a very long time, and it's changed throughout that period, both in terms of its primary function and focus, but also the size and scale of the business. To give you an idea of the growth more recently, dating back to 2004, our turnover was £41 million, and our recent set of figures that were published in 2019 was £168 million. So that gives you an idea of the growth and the scale of which the business is operating at currently. In terms of direct resource, we currently have in the region of 670 employees, of which around 10% is made up through the trade apprenticeships, and there's also an additional apprenticeship scheme as part of that within the professional management and administration parts of the business. So there's a real focus within the group about apprenticeships, bringing younger graduate schemes through, and that's very much a culture within the group. And it was one of the things that I saw when I first started to engage with CCG before I joined the business. Within the group, we have 8 different divisions, and I'll explain a wee bit more detail of that in just 2 seconds, how that core group function is formed. So the primary focus of the business is the construction, main contracting element of the business. The subsidiary parts of the business are CCG Offsite Manufacturing, which is where my role comes in within the offsite manufacturing. And again, I'll talk to that in a lot more detail just as we go through this presentation. Some of the other divisions within the business are our own window and door manufacturing, and that's inclusive of UPVC windows and doors, and also timber and alu-clad windows and doors. So that can be part of the OSM package as a full turnkey solution, or it could also be as a refurbishment on a supply and fit basis, or even just selling to an end user or a client. We then have our developments, which is looking at land acquisition, maybe private venture schemes, where a site could be developed from concept and then sold off as part of a joint venture approach, or it might even be a full turnkey solution for private for sale within the business. We have ArtTech, which is a relatively new part of the group business, which is mechanical and electrical services. Again, that's within the CCG Group, but also offering services within the industry. We have our specialist building services, which is looking at refurbishment projects, upgrades to existing buildings. We have our asset management, which is plumbing and heating, and we have our flooring division. So as I mentioned, each of one of these divisions could be engaged with on a one-to-one basis, or a full turnkey package for a complete development. So that gives you hopefully an idea of how the group is formed and made up. And an idea, to give an idea of our geographic, we're based in Scotland, and predominantly all of our work is based as a main contractor within Scotland. There's no main contract works taking place out of Scotland at this current time. And indeed, the business case, the business model is not to venture beyond Scotland at this point in time. We are very centralised in terms of our departmental businesses. So we have our head office based within CAMLACHIE in Glasgow, and our offsite manufacturing facility where I'm based today is just 2 minutes round the corner, and our window and door manufacturing facility is 2 minutes in the opposite direction. So all within a relatively large industrial estate with good access to the main corridor links to service Central Belt of Scotland. The group vision. So the group vision is very much focused on the employees, creating a progressive future for the employees and the clients there within the business. The key themes within that are innovation, trust, sustainability, integrity, investment, and excellence. So moving on to look more closely at offsite manufacture and how that's been driven. So why did we bother with offsite manufacture? What was the main drivers for venturing into an offsite manufacture? This screen, I believe, paints a very good picture in terms of the narrative behind it. If you look at the automotive industry and what Henry Ford did, he completely revolutionized car manufacturing. And to use the same analogy as for house building, if you think about all those component parts that go into manufacturing a car, and then you consider the component parts that need to go into manufacturing a house, arguably the components to make up a car are more complex than those that go into a house. So if we can standardize and automate the processes thereby to manufacture cars, and you can do that in a controlled environment to create efficiencies, then why would we not do the same with house building? It creates a much better environment for products sustainability, for efficiencies, for quality throughput. So that's very much the belief that sits behind where we are. Would you choose to build your car in a wet, damp, muddy field? No, you wouldn't do that because you can't guarantee quality and consistency. So that's one of the main drivers. Other reasons that sit behind that, program reductions, waste control, simple demand for housing that's currently here. So the recession in 2009-2010, there was a huge shortfall post-recession, and then a massive demand that's grown since then, and we've been able to offset that by offsite manufacturing. There's a skills shortage we're currently in the middle of, but we've not fully overcome that, and I really believe that offsite manufacturing and different skills development training and through different technologies is one way that the industry within the UK is going to be able to deal with the housing demand and the skills shortage that is part of a challenge in relation to that. Housing quality concerns, so with the dovetail of the skills shortage, you can have influencing factors with lower quality. And again, by bringing things into a factory-based environment, you can control that quality and the consistency of it. Building regulation compliance is another aspect that's been more centered around an offsite manufacture based product, and things like thermal performance, air tightness requirements. When you look at the product and what we can offer in terms of a factory environment, these things all play and lend themselves towards new regulations that are coming into play. In terms of the UK government perspective and where that sits politically at the minute, there's been a lot of emphasis, I would say, in the last 5 years, really focusing on where the UK government is driving offsite manufacture and how we are going to address the shortfalls and the demand that currently sits within the UK for housing. And there was a report that was issued by Mark Farmer, and it was quite a bold report. Certainly the title of it is bold as well, Modernise or Die, and that was almost laying down the gauntlet to say that there was a change that was needed, and without that step change we were in fear of just status quo and no real change. And I believe that document did create a lot of discussion, and since then there has been certainly a lot of movement within the UK regarding offsite manufacture. In terms of our direct strategy and implementation of offsite manufacture, it's been very much on a stage and gate, and slowly but surely, small steps to test something, to get the feedback, and then to move it forward. Progressive development of the system. And the quote here is quite a good one, and I think it would be summed up by our owner of our business. It can take 20 years to build a reputation, and it just takes 5 minutes to ruin it. So if you think about that and everything that you do, then I suppose you will go about doing things a bit differently. So as I say, our implementation strategy, offsite manufacture at CCG, dates back to 2007, 2008, in terms of the real R&D that was carried out to look at what technologies were in the marketplace, how do they relate to our product and construction types within the UK, and how adaptable can they be to future-proof them going forward. So there's a lot of extensive R&D looking at how things are done throughout Scandinavia, Central Europe, and other parts of the world, just to investigate what systems are there that we could look to adopt going forward. And being a main contractor, we could almost keep that in control of our own destiny, because what we could do is we could take the product on the basis that we know the end goal in terms of where we want to be, but take it to stage one, allow stage one to happen, get the feedback, make any tweaks and changes, and then roll that out, go to stage 2, to stage 3. And it's that constant feedback and dialogue between the site managers, the construction managers, the design teams, so that we're evolving that and making sure that everyone's understanding as that product evolves, how it works, how it needs to be managed. So we're getting the efficiencies that offsite manufacture can build and bring to construction, because you can have the best offsite manufactured system in the world, but if that interface is not on site, then it will fail at the first hurdle. So it needs to go hand in hand, it can't be isolated. So internal and external engagement was very much critical to that. And up to date, we have over 10,000 units manufactured, and we're still on that journey. We're not standing still, still want to progress that, push the boundaries of what we're doing, to stay at the forefront of what we're doing within the UK. So it is about continued development. So looking closely at now our factory in terms of what we have set up here in Glasgow. So the brand name, if you like, that we've given to the system is the IQ system, and that's based on wall panels, closed panel wall system, floor cassettes, roof cassettes where applicable. And within each of those key elements, we have developed a standard detail pack. And that standard detail pack is there to provide the fundamental details for all our structural closed panel system for construction-based systems for houses and for flats. And what we've developed is a fully thermally modelled detail system for SAP analysis that we can feed in to the front-end design teams to make sure that we're really looking at things from a fabric first approach to get benefit from that initial concept design. And we've got 3 different key standards that we can work to. So we've got a standard document, which is looking to achieve the bench line regulations within Scotland. We've then got our enhanced pack, which can take that to the next stage, and then our plus pack, which is taking that beyond to look at more sort of gold standards or platinum standards, or perhaps even passive house standards, depending on the full specification. And there's iterations there between each of those different documents and standards that we can look to achieve. So it gives us that extra added benefit when we're engaging at the front end to try and influence the designs, both from our product efficiencies and manufacturing principles, but also to make sure that we are driving fabric first. Looking at the different stages of our manufacturing, we could break that down into 4 key stages. So we have essentially an open panel timber frame being stage 1, which would be long panel timber frame up to 10 meters long, 3.2 meters high. That would be sheathed typically with an OSB board and a breather membrane to the external face. And that would essentially be an open panel. We're all about closed panel systems. So what we do is, by default, everything would be taken straight to a stage 2 system as a minimum, which would be a standard closed panel system. And over and above stage 1, we are adding insulation, internal OSB or fire layers, a vapor control layer, and a service zone as well. We then move on to stage 3, which would be looking at a serviced closed panel system. And by serviced, what I'm talking about there is not a full plug-and-play system, but providing the service containment for those services to be put in place on site. So things like electrical, first fix, plumbing, ventilation, all of the ductwork and any of the fixing mechanisms will be in place to enable a faster and a more efficient installation of those on site. It's the containment rather than necessarily the system itself. The next stage of our development is very much looking at plug and play systems, and that's something that's currently ongoing. But the technology in terms of having a full turnkey system isn't fully developed yet, so there's still a bit of work to be done there in terms of having a completely integrated system that we can offer to our clients. Within stage 3, we're also adding a final layer of plasterboard for the panels as well, which gets CNC routed for all of the apertures for your socket positions for electrical switches, etc. And then finally moving on to stage 4 would be an external cladding on the system, whether that be a lightweight render, a brick slip system, or a timber-based cladding product. So that's the 4 key stages within our wall panel configurations. The IQ system has been through a series of different approvals and testings. And one of the questions we get asked quite commonly is about our certification process. Do we carry a BBA certificate, for example, within the UK BBA certification? And the answer to that is no, we don't, because effectively what we're doing is we are taking products that carry their own certifications, CE marks, BBAs, and we are fitting those in a factory-based environment. So if you consider a house that's built on site, that finished house doesn't carry a BBA certificate because it's built using certified products to specific details. All we are doing is taking what's done typically in a site-based environment and doing it in a factory-based environment. The components and the products are the same, it's just how they come together in the factory. If we were to go down the route of a BBA, because of the level of flexibility that we offer to the marketplace, we would have to carry in the region of 50 to 100 BBA certificates, and quite simply the management and the cost associated with that, just it wouldn't be warranted. So what we have done is we've engaged and we've ensured that we have the necessary approvals and testing and overarching quality control checks in place. So we've engaged with my previous employer, Napier University, and that's one of the reasons I've become more involved with CCG over the years, is because of that initial engagement. So We've worked with Napier University to look at the structural performance of our systems, the thermal performance of our systems, and the acoustic performance of our systems. We are engaging with various third-party warranty providers that's currently backed by Premier Guarantee, but equally on a number of sites we do have NHBC certification in the UK that we've worked to, and there's no issues in terms of achieving these warranty providers using our system. We're also members of the Structural Timber Association. We've recently gained gold accreditation for both factory-based and site-based activities. So again, just a recognition of the control measures that are in place. New home warranties. So I've touched on NHBC, Premier Guarantee, Checkmate as examples. We've engaged with all of these over the years in the 10,000 plus units that we've worked with. Build off-site property assurance schemes, BOPAS, so recognition, certification by lenders, providing 60-year durability and assurance. In Scotland, we have the structural engineering design, the SER certification. Again, all part of the process that we work through as part of our system. And then things like the council and mortgage lenders, again, to ensure that we can meet the requirements of our clients, that we're going to give them the confidence they need. Looking now more closely at the configurations and the flexibility that we can offer of our system. So I mentioned that we've thermally modelled our wall panels and our details. And what I'm showing here is just a screenshot of the different permutations. We can play about with different parameters within the wall panels to try and achieve different levels of U value. So for example, typically we will have a 38 by 140 timber frame stud. So the insulation within that bay can be changed. It could be a frame therm 40, or it could range up to a frame therm 32. And each of those products have different thermal resistance values, and that in itself can influence the U value. So that's the first step. We can then look at the rigid insulation that's overlaid on top of the structural kit. And again, what that's doing is it's adding to the thermal bridging through the timber frame, but it's also giving you more insulation across the depth of that panel, which by default provides a better U value. We've adopted reflective membranes for within the cavities. So again, these are all added factors to bring in that U value, whether it needs to be down to 0.13 or up at a more standard level currently of 0.17. It allows us the flexibility to play with those different parameters relative to the client's needs. Our acoustic performance, so again, within Scotland we have different regulations and different permutations of how we can go about achieving that. And what we've seen through testing on site is that we're able to achieve and better that, given as a good factor of safety, so that if there is any enhancement in regulations, then we've got comfort in terms of the current baseline that we are providing. There is scope there to be realigned with any regulations that are being carried going forward. Fire compliance. So this is something that we spent a lot of time on, and we just recently went through another suite of testing with BRE to have our kits fully tested. So we have a typical 30-minute wall detail for houses and a 60-minute wall detail for flatted developments. Both of those have been tested, and the testing criteria is done in such a manner that allows us to just play about with those different product specifications relative to the thermal performance, but still maintain the fire certification requirements that we need, be it 30 minutes or 60 minutes. We also have our 60-minute spandrel panel details, party wall panels as well that we've tested, and we've got strict quality control procedures that are carried out on site with regards to fire stopping and how that's been done. And I'll show you an example of that as we go through the presentation. Another benefit of using a closed panel system is the separating distances during construction. So because we have a fully closed panel, we have inherent fire properties built in during construction. If you consider that versus an open panel timber frame, it would arguably be more susceptible to the separating distance if you're building in close proximity to an adjacent building. And the STA, the Structural Timber Association, provide guidance for that. So it actually offers us further benefit during construction because we can build in close proximity to occupied buildings without having to put additional means of protection in place to enable us to do that. So that is an added benefit of a closed panel system during construction. Our lightweight cladding system is one that we've spent a number of years developing, and that is one that carries its own BBA certification, but that's been developed in direct conjunction with Alumass facade systems. So it's NHBC and LEBC approved within the UK for classification use in excess of 30 years, but it has been tested through the accredited test body that will be a 60-year classification to supersede that. It's unrestricted in height in terms of its fire performance. Its classification rated A2, so it can be used on flatted developments as well. Over the years, we've trialled this system on in excess of probably 300 units, and some of the system benefits that brings is the availability and lead times of materials. So facing brick, as an example, traditional facing brick, it's not uncommon to see a lead time between 12 and 16 weeks to procure that material. Can be longer in times of high demand or if it's a specific type of facing brick, whereas brick slips, it's more of a commodity-based product, and you can get that in a much shorter lead time, so 4 to 6 weeks. So again, looking at lean manufacture and optimized material flow, there's benefits that come with that. We can also look at reducing waste, optimizing the designs to suit the standardization of our kit panels, sheet sizing, etc. Not to mention the fact that you've got the embodied carbon of facing brick that you're offsetting by using a composite brick slip system. So the environmental benefit is significant. Also, the availability of resource. We can train operatives within the factory to carry out these functions as opposed to relying on apprentice and time-served bricklayers on site. You're less restricted by weather on site as well, because again, this is done predominantly within the factory. Looking at the overarching benefits of offsite manufacture within CCG, so the environmental credentials, so responsible sourcing of our timber-based materials, they all follow chain of custody supplies. We're conscious of our vehicle movements, looking to manage those sustainably, minimise vehicle movements where we can, maximise the volume within each vehicle, and that's done so through the ISO 14001. Waste management is something that we've focused on over the last few years, with a real drive to bring that segregation into play. And these two graphs here just highlight some of the initial work that was done on that. So what we're seeing in the top graph, the waste segregation by percentage there over that period, as you can see that the percentage of waste segregation has increased. And then in the graph below, the average weight of our active waste skips, which is going to landfill, has decreased. So it's a trending relationship there, because we're segregating more of our waste into recycling purposes. Our active waste has reduced, and that's something that we're continually trying to focus on and reduce. Quality management within the factory. So we've got a series of different processes that can be done within the factory. We have team leaders overseeing specific areas within the factory that are tasked with daily check sheets, spot checks on random panels throughout the day, and that gets documented. And then we have final checks in place before panels are loaded for delivery to site. Because of the automation within the factory as well, we have specific tolerances and manufacturing consistencies that can work to, so that can guarantee greater consistency. That's all managed by ISO 9001 within the factory. This is an example of just one of our quality report sheets that's done. So this is carried out documenting every single panel prior to the loading sequence, and the key 10 checks that we would request as a final check. So that's the final check, and then any remedial actions that would happen prior to that. So again, it just emphasises the consistency and the opportunity to make sure you're getting that constant quality product leaving the factory. But to try and manage that in a site-based environment would be much harder to do. A further quality check is done through our CAD/CAM software, because the entire wall line factory process, the production information is managed through CAD/CAM software. So every process and every task that's done in the factory on the wall panel manufacture is broken down and displayed on the screens, and it's done on a book in, book out basis. So when the panel's booked in, the operative has to carry out the tasks, highlight the boxes to say that that's been done, and then book the panel next out into the next process. So what that does is it acts as a check to say that it's been done as per the contract manufacturing drawing. But in the background, that information gets logged, and it can be extracted and run as a report to highlight the time and the operative and when that was carried out. So if you need to go back to check something to make sure it has been done, you've got that information there again that you can access and pull to take forward. So again, that level of information is very detailed, and you would never have that traceability unless that was done in a factory-based environment. This is just an example of the panel drawings, one of the panel drawings that comes through the factory screens. What we're looking at here is the boarding information on the external face to show the sheathing material, a boiler location, and the size of each of those sheets to make sure that they're being fitted in the correct procedure and the correct nailing patterns are being applied to that board. Looking at our site activities, so as well as the offsite manufacture, we are also responsible for the on-site erect of these systems as well. So we have specific contract supervisors that oversee our kit erect subcontractors. They get detailed kit erect programs providing the sequence of works, and we've implemented electronic quality assessment and sign-off protocol systems. So an example of that being using the DocuSign cloud-based environment, just items specific to our checklists, which are walked through by the contract supervisor on site with the subcontract kit erector to flag, make sure these are done, complete, signed off. If there's anything that's outstanding, that would get recorded, and then a slip would get electronically sent to the site manager. He gets a record of that, and he has to authorize it to say that he's in agreement with that. So we've got that full sort of historical check to say that our structural closed panel system has been completed as per our checklist, signed off, and handed over to the main contractor before they start their second fix processes on site. One of the systems that we use as part of that process is Site Audit Pro reporting, where you can take photographs as you're walking through, highlighting anything that's required, and that would get sent direct to our subcontractor or to the relevant person that can address that. So again, it's visibility, and it's highlighting the information to deal with things at source and keep on top of those until they're actioned and signed off. We're creating a safer working environment as well. So in the offsite environment, it's improved working conditions, it's warmer, it's dry, it's well lit. Believe it or not, it's not always sunny in Scotland. It does rain quite a lot, so working in a factory-based environment does have its benefits. And on site, we're creating a safer environment because there's fewer people required. Typically, our system will be erected by a squad of 3 or 4 men using the crane to erect the system. So there's reduced materials on site, there's fewer people, and there's less machinery. So that by default just creates a safer working environment for all involved. Program efficiencies is a massive benefit of offsite manufacture. So rapid site erection, weather protection. You can see in this example that all of our system is fully protected with a polythene down the face of the plasterboard. Again, just things like driving rain during construction, because we've got insulation in there, plasterboard, any moisture during construction, we want to make sure that that system's fully protected. So that is a real focus during that kit erect process, to make sure that we're protecting the system as much as we can until we get it wind and watertight. There's less trade interfaces. As I mentioned, on a job like this, you would have one squad of 4 kit erectors and a crane operator that would be on site, and the scaffolder working in conjunction with the kit erector. So you're probably talking about 6 or 7 bodies in terms of that operating demand. There's fewer wet trades, less drying out time required on site, and as a result, it means that it's a more simplified management process for all involved during that process. Just giving a very rough idea of program efficiencies. So this was a previous block of flats with circa 60 plots required. And you're looking at the durations there in terms of start to finish. For the superstructure element, we've got a duration of 36 days. So it gives you an indication of the flatted development. For a standard typical house, a detached house, you're probably looking at a duration of about 4 to 5 days from slab to roof on and wind and watertight for the full closed panel superstructure erect. Again, thinking about design flexibility. So it's a system-based approach based on timber frame principles. So we're looking at early design, as much client interface as we can at that front end as possible to drive through some of our key principles with offsite manufacture. So certain panel sizes, not exceeding sheet sizes, getting consistency in terms of standardization. Looking at future adaptation, so if there's hoist provision that might have to come in, or future provision for grab rails and supports, again, we can build that flexibility and adaptability into our kits as long as we know that we have that information at the front end. It can be future proof. And there's been a real focus on net zero in the last 12 months or so. And within CCG, we've worked up our own in-house package in terms of how we're going to deal with that going forward, in conjunction with one of our consultants, Carbon Futures. So again, like everything we do, it will very much be fabric first based approach, and to look at getting as much from the timber system as we can. In conjunction with that, looking at our thermal modelling aspects, paying closer attention to our air tightness detailing where required. And really the driver for that is reducing the energy and the operating costs. So looking at our SAP compliance and FM compliance. So that's a real driver at the minute, and there's a few projects on the radar with COP26 in Glasgow taking place this year. There'll be a few projects, no doubt, to follow from that. So it's certainly the way the industry is going, and net zero, I think, will be the first step, but then true zero, I think, will be the next step in terms of the embodied carbon, and not just the operating carbon that we're looking at. Very quickly, just to run through some example projects, just to give a flavour of what we have done. As I say, this is just an example of some of the developments we've done over the years. So looking at social and rented housing, we had the Commonwealth Games 2014 Athlete Village, was done as a city legacy deal. So it was 3 main contractors working in conjunction. There was 704 units in total to be delivered as part of that. And CCG's package of that was 237 units, and that was delivered from start to finish in 292 days. So it gives you an idea of the scale and the size and the speed and the efficiency at which we were able to operate. And that was all done using our IQ system with roof cassettes. Another example, slightly different, flatted development and a mixture of houses on this one. So you see the before and the after, the regeneration within this area. There was 141 new homes, a mixture of flats and houses, as I mentioned. Again, all done in different iterations of cladding and facing brick there using our offsite manufacture system. Project through in Edinburgh. This project featured a facade retention that you see at the front there with a new build element behind that. So it's quite a complex and tricky job, but again done using our IQ system. And there was 2 new build developments at the rear of that courtyard as well that were erected. A full regeneration here in Glasgow. This was the 5th phase regeneration in total. The regeneration of that site was 540 units over the course of about a 10-year period, and the different variations and configurations all the way through to the most recent phase that was done. So you can see some flatted developments in this case ranging up to 5-6 stories high. So it just shows again dealing with simple 2-bedroom house all the way through to complex flatted developments up to 6 stories high, again all using different iterations of the IQ system. Looking at private housing, this is one of our key external clients, Fjord House, and they are very focused on bespoke one-off housing. Every house is very different, very unique, different features, and again we work with them the length and breadth of the UK through the Isle of Harris all the way down to Devon in England, and we've got a very good partnership working with them. Project that was delivered, one of the very first real ventures into passive house that we did. So again, it was taken from concept as a passive house compliant project, but the client decided not actually to go for the full certification nonetheless. It is built using 254 space studs. So again, it shows flexibility in terms of the system parameters that we can adopt within the factory. And yeah, a very unique project, but again, one using our offsite system and delivered wind and water type within 4 weeks. Another passive house scheme. This was at the time the largest scheme within certainly Scotland at the time in 2012. It was 8 dwelling semi-detached units taken through to passive house standard, and we learned a lot on that job. It was a really steep learning curve in terms of passive house being introduced, and yeah, it was a good project and one that I think everybody will look back on, and yeah, it helped us develop a lot in conjunction with where our system was and where it needed to get to in terms of meet passive house compliance. Moving into commercial and office-based projects. So again, hopefully showing the breadth and depth of what our system can offer. Office development for West of Scotland, who's actually one of our clients that we work with, so delivering their office space, and a new build block of flats was also built at the rear of their office. The visitor centre for BRE. This project was built to zero carbon and featured our IQ system with an element of homegrown cross-laminated timber. Student accommodation, a really interesting project that was done in Glasgow. So this was built, you see the existing teremental flatted developments there, and the entrance into that courtyard, that was the only way in and out of that site. So it was very, very constrained in terms of the logistics building within this courtyard of occupied houses. So the programme of works had to really be sequenced in such a manner that we could get in there, build as efficiently, with causing as least disruption as possible to the tenants, and as quickly as possible to get back out. And yeah, that job is quite unique in terms of the visual aspect as well. But again, it just shows the flexibility of what we can offer. And then moving on to some of the education projects that we've delivered over the years. We're currently on a framework with Fife Council, one of the local authorities in Scotland, delivering an education programme with them looking at nursery extensions, full new build nursery projects and primary school projects as well. Again, so all using our IQ system, and through in Abington with South Lanarkshire Council. Again, James Hall using some glulam structural beams to create big open spaces. Healthcare sector, again, is one that we've ventured into and we can deliver upon quite successfully. This is a project in Newton Mearns in Glasgow, 113 bed care home with a day centre, hairdressers and a cinema room. So again, very different to the run-of-the-mill housing and flatted developments, but just showing the options that we can tailor to, and another one in East Kilbride for a similar client. And finally, moving through to some of the more bespoke projects that we've done. Again, showing the design flexibility. It's not all about square boxes. There is a lot of design flexibility that can be brought using offsite manufacture. But again, that early upfront dialogue is absolutely critical to try and achieve projects like this. And finally, a project that we did through in the Cairngorms in the Highlands. It's a golf club for the Spey Valley. So again, quite a unique project there. And just to close out, which might lead into maybe some of the questions that Ryan and Ivan have. So some of the challenges that we maybe feel are still prevalent for offsite manufacture as an industry or personal to our business. Cost certainty is something that comes up. Impact on cash flow, because it is a very different model in terms of the cash flow to a typical construction. Methods of procurement, different frameworks that are in play in the UK have certainly paved the way for offsite manufacture over the last 5 years. Opportunity for early engagement, so really about looking at what that offsite system can do and where the benefits will come from having that early engagement. Ownership and decision making when it comes to site-based interface. The industry appetite, so is there really an industry appetite for offsite manufacture? Is that step change ready to happen and for it to be driven through? Volumes and economies of scale, knowledge and understanding. Are the design teams and engineers fully aware of the different offsite manufacture products that are available within the marketplace? Because detailing and the design will play a big factor in that. The link between offsite and onsite I've already touched on, skill shortage, and the saviour, the housing shortage that we were faced with in the UK, and just industry culture as well. Certainly in the UK we have an inherent sort of dinosaur approach to construction, and I think that has changed and is certainly underway in terms of a step change, but yeah, it will still continue to take time for that to fully change and really break the mold of what the inherent industry has been in construction in the UK. But there's real opportunity in front of us, I think, with where the whole industry is heading, and it seems to be backed by the UK government, which is really pleasing to see. So what do we offer? What is our sales pitch? We're not just a timber frame supplier or manufacturer. We are very much a construction organisation with a manufacturing division that sits within its roots. So it's all about client-based solutions. It's not just providing a product. It's about that whole turnkey solution and the offering. We do offer something different, and it's about engaging, creating longer term partnerships with like-minded organisations, and pivotal to that quality, innovation, whole build approach and speed. So that I think kind of wraps things up from myself. Just finally to quote back on Henry Ford and what he did for their industry, coming together as a beginning, staying together as a process, and working together as a success. So again, if we can take take a snippet from that, then I think we'll all be in a better place going forward.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. Henry Ford certainly is a mythical creature in manufacturing, and we hope there comes a time when we can look back on this period in housing manufacturing and also see some mythical figures that have really blazed that trail, including CCG. We don't have we don't have much time for questions, but I did want to just thank you for coming on the ModX and sharing what CCG is doing. And the other piece of this we wanted to mention is ModX is hoping to take folks to Scotland again. And we once COVID allows us to do that, the pandemic.
Yeah. Certainly both. That'll be soon, Ryan.
And we'd like to visit CCG if that's possible and bring our audience. That would be great.
No, we would be more than open to that when it's permitted to do so, Ryan. We'd be very happy to host you and Ivan and show you around what we do here at the factory and take you to some of the sites as well. Definitely happy to share and continue that journey with you guys.
We bring some friends as well, usually. So fair warning.
Impressive work.
Definitely.
Impressive work, David. Thank you for sharing today. Appreciate it. And thanks for being on ModX Network Voices.
Not a problem. Thank you, guys.